Good afternoon, fellow taxidermists, and welcome to Spirit Lake, Iowa, Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company, Thursday afternoon, Facebook Live. We're here once again to demonstrate some things and share some ideas and give you a clue into what happens in our shop from week to week. If you joined us last couple weeks, I think we showed you ear setting on game animals, and I hope you got a chance to try that. That's our method, and like anything we show you here is not a wrong or a right. It's things that we've settled on in our shop, and they work for us, so we pass them along to you just to give them a try and see how they work. Last couple weeks ago, we did the ear setting, and like we showed you, build your ear butts out of clay, paint them with a good quality hide paste. The next day, you can pull them off. Your ear butts are really nice and durable. They will stay on the animal. They will stay together. They won't crumble because of the glue you put on them. And when you mount them, you mount the ear skin right into, or the ear liner right into the ear skin. And when you mount the deer or elk or caribou, whatever it happens to be, it's going to index right back into where you set it, and you'll sew them up. And when you sew them up, the ears are actually a little bit That's the big boss leaving. And bye, honey.
Setting a good example.
And the nice part about clay ear bases is that you're able to adjust them, and we call it twink them. I like to move my ears up a little 1/4 inch or out a little bit or in a little bit, and you're able to do that if you have a somewhat soft clay for an ear base. They will harden in there. Really nice and firm. You'll have hide paste on it, and it'll glue the skin to the clay, which is hardened, which dries to the side of the mannequin. So it's a really, we think, an excellent way of doing ear bases, and you're very, they're very moldable. You can move them, and you can adjust them and kind of contour them to your liking, whatever you like. So anyway, that's what we showed you a couple weeks ago. Last week we showed you eyes. We set our eyes. A lot of people use epoxies and things like that. We use, again, clay. We use critter clay for that. Critter clay, animal clay are both excellent clays. They're harder than your stoneware moist clays, which is very soft clay. So we showed you that and hope you got a chance to try that. Today we're going to move on, and we're moving on to a walleye, and we did a walleye segment a while back, and I think we carved a body for that. And this time we were skinning fish and happened to come across a fish that fit one of the Fish on Fish forums by Brett Wingfield and Tim Perkins. And because there's fish come in so many different sizes and pre-made bodies don't, without a whole lot of work, you can't use one of the pre-made bodies for every single fish that comes along. This one happened to work, and we thought this would be an excellent method to show you how to use a boughten body for your fish mounting procedure. So this walleye was about a 10-pound walleye, and we skinned him this week. And when we skinned him, this is what you should have, something that looks, a little bit like that. We want them very, very nice and white. No, I call it tags of skin. You don't want any tags of skin on your shards of skin that are hanging on, any tissue, so make sure you get those all off. Best way to do that, we've always used a really sharp, razor sharp knife held straight up and down and kind of shave the skin in the direction of the ribs. And all of those little shards of skin will come off. That'll give you a really nice surface of your skin. Don't forget the details. It's really important to get way down into your tail. Your tail, if you'll look, your tail skin goes, if Kate can zoom in on this, your tail skin goes all the way out to here. So look where the scales are. And when you skin your tail out, you're going to want to skin all the way to there, and you're going to want to flesh all that very neatly also. Same with your dorsal fins. We've got to skin this all the way up to the fin rays. And then we actually go in here and scrape from both sides. Take scissors. I like these Weiss scissors that you can actually cut the knuckles of the fins. You know, you can cut right through them and get a really nice, clean cut. Get as far up in the head as you can. This is the body that we're going to put in there. And you'll notice it's got a pretty big protrusion off of the top of the head. And that protrusion needs to be able to go all the way up in here. So you're going to test fit that. So as I got this walleye skinned and cleaned up as good as I could get him, I kept taking that body and I would slide it up in there and just see how it fits. It's critical that this fits in here really, really well. I don't want to have my skin overlap, and I don't want to have a great big giant gap. Customers might like a big gap on the back of their fish until they tell their friends how big a fish it was, and then they happen to look at the back of it and you got a big gap. That isn't very popular also. Put in what you take out. So make sure that whatever you put in is what you took out. Now, to start with, I didn't know if we were going to be using a button body. So I treat this just like I would if we use a carved body. Most of the time, the fish we do here, we use a soft styrofoam like this. And it's a 1.5 pound density foam. And we can carve it real easy. So, anticipating that's probably what I'm going to do, even if you think you have a body that's going to fit, there's a chance that it either has to be made larger or smaller. So I still want to have a good set of measurements. So I have width sheets and I have a side contour of this fish. And before we skinned him, I posed him in the pose that I wanted. Then I took height measurements where the body quits in the head. I took a height measurement at his cleather bone. That's the bone I cut through right here. I took a height measurement through the widest part of that fish. And I want to make sure that I make the fish the same size as what the customer brought in. I took through the widest part of the fish with my calipers. I took a measurement, and I just recorded on my tracing. I also made a tracing with my grease pencil all the way around the perimeter of the fish. I tried to be detailed around the tail, tried to be detailed up in that throat latch as well as the top of the head. So there's reference points that I'm going to line this fish up on that body. That's where the meat quits in the head, where the cleather bone is. That's right here is collarbone. Where his vent is, and where the tail goes. And all of those should line up. I can even, on this body, because it's a pretty detailed body, I can line up his dorsal fin, his anal fin also, according to the fish skin. So it's nice to have a complete set of measurements, whether you use a button body or if you're carving your own. If I was carving my own, we would cut this out with a knife, transfer it onto a piece of 1.5 pound density fish carving foam. We cut it out on a bandsaw. We cut the profile of the fish out on a bandsaw. And once we get it cut out, then we'll take width measurements. So on this fish, I have, for every one of these index marks, and you can go back to any of our other archived shows in YouTube, we have some pretty good detailed how to make a pattern for a fish, because there is a little knack to it, and practice makes perfect. But on every one of these marks, I have a height, a width, and a circumference. So right through the fattest part of this fish, he's 6.5 inches tall, he's 4.5 inches wide, and he's 18 inches circumference. So I have those everywhere along there. When we looked at that and thought, geez, I think one of our bought-in bodies is going to fit that, we went and got one and actually measured it. all those measurements to see how well they lined up. Sometimes your circumference is actually going to be bigger on the fish than it is on your body, and it's going to fit real good, and you're going to wonder how come that phenomenon happened. It's because this fish skin, because of its thickness, will take up at least 3/4 of an inch of girth on that fish. So you're going to test fit him, see how he fits, and we'll do a good test fit now just to make sure. And I've got a little foam pad here that I keep all my pins in that I'm going to use in mounting this fish. I like to use a lot of T-pins. I've got upholstery pins. I've got little detailed pins. Sewing needles over here. Now usually, bought and body, it depends on what you want to do with them. The customer is going to want this attached to a piece of driftwood or some kind of a base. So I needed a rod in here. This is a threaded rod, and I drilled a hole in the back. Fish on fish forms, unless you ask for them, will have a wood block in them. I drilled through the wood block with a spade bit and then a certain direction, either forward or backward, doesn't matter. Then I took a threaded ready rod and I bent a 90-degree angle in it, like that. Fit it in there. In my cavity, I made a little tunnel down this way and a tunnel up this way. Fit it in there so I knew it would fit. Filled my little tunnel system in there with auto body putty mixed with a little resin so that it was pourable and it would get everywhere. I stuck my rod in there. I held it till it gelled and then just let it cure. Now, that should be, I should have a little auto body core going this way, little auto body core going this way. My threaded rod is buried in there, and this is going to be a super secure measurement or attachment. Now, if it's a smaller fish, we did quite a few fish this week. Smaller fish, we'll use a wire. We'll use a annealed wire, which is the easier bendable 8-gauge wire. Sometimes we'll even use a 6-gauge wire. Depends on the size of the fish. And on those, we just bring it right through the back of the driftwood, bend them down. You've seen us do it before. And we'll run a couple screws alongside and bury the wire in the wood. Sometimes we'll finish over them. So to test fit them, anytime, no matter whether it's a fish or a bird or a fox or a deer head, there's things you're going to know where it goes, and there's things you're not going to know where it goes. I've seen too many people stick a fish body in a fish, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm 4 inches short back here. And then they're going to bring the skin around, and they're going to go, worse than that, my girth is like 2 inches short here. You have to put what goes where. Put your head where your head goes, put your tail where your tail goes, and then we're going to line up his anus, we're going to line up his throat latch, we're going to line up the top of the head, we're going to line up all that stuff, and I'll bet you're going to have a much better fit than you ever thought you had. So to do that, I can see where my meat quits in the head, and on this body, it's really well defined right here. So I'm going to bring that skull, which I cleaned out really good, right up to there, and I'm going to put a couple pins there to hold that in place. So that's about where I want that. Now remember, it doesn't pay to go to a lot of work and start gluing this up or sewing or however you're going to fasten your skin on. It doesn't pay to do any of that if it's not going to fit. So you got to know that it's going to fit. I'm going to bring, he's got nice little indexes where the pelvic fins go. There's his pelvic fins. I'm going to line them up right into there. Tim and Brett did an exceptional job on the fish on fish forms. And typically they line up really nice. Okay, head is attached where I want the head to be. Now let's go to the tail. Now, if you didn't skin your tail out far enough, it's going to extend that tail skin off of the body too far, and then your seam isn't going to come together well enough. Okay? Now, I'm going to bring this belly skin around. Now, my rules for how I want my seam to come together is I never want it to overlap. I can handle a little gap if it's not too wrong.
We've got Michael Hawkins who says, glad to see my favorite crew at it again. Tattoo Mike on YouTube says, you guys are great. We've got Team Tundra Wildlife Artist who says, Steve Von Hagen in Alberta tuning in, mounting a life-size polar bear this afternoon as I listen and learn with the Matuska crew. Thanks for all your help. And then I believe...
Polar bear's fun. All right. This is just nothing more than my test fit, but you can see that my skin, actually I can make it touch comfortably, just a little tug. Now, if I were sewing this, I would be able to bring my skin all together and just with the tension of the thread, I'm sewing it. But we're going to cheat today. Now, another thing I've got, my dorsal fin is off to the show side. My dorsal fin really needs to go a little bit over. So when I actually position him for good, I'm going to make sure that his dorsal fin is lined up just a little bit better. That's easy to have happen. You get all carried away and think you're doing such a good job and get him all sewn up or however you would fasten him on here, and then you find your fins off to one side or the other. I would cut your thread and redo it myself. Okay, this is what you're going to end up with. So I think we can go with that. Now, if you're careful, you can leave your pins in the skin. You get poked a time or two sometimes. We have a new girl helping Kate, and her name's Jill, and she's always wanted to skin fish and mount fish. So I said, okay, Jill, you can watch today, and you can be in our studio audience, and we'll get you a whole pile of fish out tomorrow, right? Okay, a few things I want. I want my skin somewhat dry. It can be dampish. If something starts drying out, like your tail or fins start drying out, I've got a little squirt bottle down here. I like to give it a little spritz because when things dry, they stop stretching, so you don't want them to dry out too much. I want to do something with his cheeks because I cleaned out his cheeks really, really good. And if you want a good tool to do that, these little cheek scrapers, they come in a couple different sizes, are excellent for, we always used a knife, but these are really nice for getting in here and scraping, and they're serrated a little bit. Good for your grapefruits and your fish. But they're really good for scraping up there and getting all the meat out. And take your finger, feel in there. You don't want any tissue We also, I like to fill those with borax because I always use a lot of borax when I skin on my fingers. Put borax up in there and work it around, then come back and scrape with this or with your knives or different tools, and the borax will kind of cling to that meat and clean that out really good. I'm going to fill those cheeks with clay, and I'm going to use the Stoneware Moist Clay. I do not need any kind of a strength in there. It's just nothing more than a filler. Okay, I have a little meat right here.
Taxidermy Shop says you guys are great. We've got Cindy Pattengill who's watching in Maine and loves our videos.
Thank you, thank you. You notice I'm all alone today? My little partner Brett is on his way to go tarpon fishing. So somebody has to stay and work, and that happens to be me. Okay, I'm going to take clay and I'm going to go through the eye hole and I'm going to reconstruct his cheek using good reference like this cast that we have. I can see what a good, fresh, nice walleye cheek should be like. This is a 10-pound fish. Big fish like that gets a pretty meaty cheek. So I don't want to make him look like a chipmunk, but I do want to match what I see here.
Cindy Pattengill would like to know, is that a white-bodied clay?
White body clay? I don't know what that is, but I've got white fish clay. It's a ceramic product. It's soft. It air dries. We use it on fish because any clay you use on a fish skin can show through. The color will telegraph through. Any of the dark clays, we want to be real careful because if you put a dark clay in the cheek and when he dries, it's going to darken up the cheek. The white clay dries just like that and it's easier to paint. Okay, now as I pack that clay in there, sometimes I trap air, and when the fish dries, you think you did a really good job. When the fish dries, you're going to have sunk in pockets where you trapped air, you didn't get the filler in there, and then when it shrunk down, you've got big divots. To help alleviate that, I'm going to take my needle that I would sew up a fish, and you guys are going to look at this and go, oh my gosh, that's a monster needle. It is, but it doesn't make as big a hole as it is for length. Works really good, something I can get a hold of even on slippery fish, and I can sew very easily. It's a 3-cornered like a Glover's needle, and I'm just going to poke it all the way around the perimeter. And that's going to let air escape, which is going to allow my clay to get all the way to the very edge. And the holes are never going to have to be fixed. You're never going to know they were there. And to get it in there, I just roll my clay out in a cigar type fashion, and I just start pinching it off on the eyelid as I'm stick it in a little ways. I'm putting in little pieces. Now fish skin is stretchy, and because it's stretchy, you can stretch out that skin farther than what it was meant to be. So be a little bit conscious of how much you're putting in. I'm getting a lot of clay on my fingers, and that's going to transfer onto my skin, and I have a risk of getting it under the scales, which is going to leave residue. Just pretty soon we're going to have to wash our hands and clean up the fish skin. Now that skin really bulged out kind of like a water balloon for a second there, so make sure that you keep pushing it down and you don't leave it too bulbous. Okay, now I have plenty in there. Now I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to try to smoothly take down the amount that I have in there and make it more walleye looking. And you can always add more. Do we still get hearts and bubbles and all that stuff?
We do. Got Richard Walker that says, miss me some Tom Matuska. Well, miss the whole crew, actually. Great people, great place to learn, and always got a good story. Mike Cottrell says, love your products and shipping is top notch. And Cindy would like to know, would you ever use a damp fine fish filler instead of clay?
Yeah. You can use fish fill or any of those. You can use that. I like clay because it gives me, I can still come in tomorrow and squish it down a little bit, kind of reshape it a little. Once fish fill sets, it's not changeable. But yes, a lot of people do that.
Tyler Marker would like to know, what is your favorite fish to mount?
Oh, gosh. We do, the fish that we get here the most, we do a lot of walleyes, lot of big northerns. Used to do a lot of muskies. Now they're, people are pretty conservation minded, so we tend to do not as big a trophy fish as we used to do. Bass, smallmouth, we do lots of largemouth, smallmouth. Okay, I think that's good enough to start. I'm going to rinse my hands off. We did a lot of crappies this week, and we kind of have crappies piling up on us to where we weren't getting behind in the crappies. We used to do, especially when we taught students, crappies can lose scales in the wrong hands, and a lot of people have asked us if we had any tricks to skin a crappie without losing scales. And there's all kinds of different gimmicks to make that happen. And we've soaked them in denatured alcohol. We've painted them with Elmer's glue, all different things. But I don't know, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 crappies here, and I don't think we lost a scale on one of them, and on the show side. And we did them all with no aid at all, nothing but a skinning knife like this and a little care. So people are always trying to show you fancy, foolproof ways to skin a crappie. Just care is all you need, and don't bend the skin. But we did them all, and I don't think we lost a scale on the show side of one. Okay, now I call this a gasket. You'll never be able to carve the tail rays careful enough that they will fit on here with no air gap. So I'm going to put a little gasket of clay on the skin so that when the skin is together, I can shape it. The clay will take in that little air gap. And the same up here, I'm going to do it on the top of the head. I'm going to put a little clay in the top of the head, push this into it, and try to shape it into a nice natural look. Not too much. If you put too much clay on in the tail, you're going to extend that body, the skin off of the body, and it's going to make that fish longer, and your body won't fit then.
Mike would like to know if he missed how you prepare your skin and preserve it.
We have a real simple, there's all kinds of chemicals you can buy, fish skin tans and everything, but for 45 years, we have used borax, salt, Protex pre-soak when it first came available, and have ever since, Protex pre-soak, and a little bit of bactericide. And we usually will tan our fish, for lack of a better word. It's not really a tan, but we'll take a 5-gallon bucket of water, and we'll put probably a cup of salt in it, and a cup of borax, maybe not quite a cup, a splash of bactericide, and a couple ounces of Protex pre-soak, and mix it all up, and that's our fish pickle, and we've been doing that forever and ever and ever. We'll sell you all the high-priced chemicals to tan your fish, but we don't use them very. And our hide paste for this fish is nothing more than latex caulk, and let's see. Somewhere I should have, there we go. Latex caulk mixed with a little bit of water, just so it's brushable. Makes a really nice fish glue. And I'm just putting on a nice coat, kind of like wallpaper. Heavy coat of paint, so it'll slide. Now, some things that are very beneficial in the way we do this are, one, we have a very light colored fish body. If you're using the blue foam and fish foam like this, if you're carving a body, comes in a lot of different colors. Light to white to cream is what we want. If you use something like the blue billet flotation foam, the blue foam will telegraph through your skin, and you're going to see blue in the thin areas around your fins, around your anal fin, around the gill areas. You're going to have blue foam showing through that you're going to have to paint out. We've had pink, we've had purple, we've had a lot of different colors, so it's very important for us to get a color foam, and it's not easy stuff to find. Get a color foam that doesn't interfere with a fish skin color. If we get one that we can't live with, like purple or the blue fish foam, we will actually paint them. And we'll take latex house paint, Kills works good. We paint our whole body at this point with one of those heavier latex paints, and then we can mount the fish and it won't, the color won't telegraph through. Okay, I'm going to push my head on. I'm going to bring this portion around. I have to lift up my gills. My gills have fallen in. Now you can use the real gills or you can use artificial gills. Artificial ones you'll have to usually take the real gills out. I'm going to line my pelvic fins up in the slot.
Jerry Nissen would like to know if you roughed up the form so the glue will stick.
I did not. they seem to stick. It's not like your drumming and things like that tend to not be an issue with a fish. You can. I want to make sure I got good slide on it. If you do rough it up, don't rough it up like we do a deer where you shred the foam. Kind of keep it real nice and rough, neatly rough, I guess, if I was going to say something. Drumming on a fish isn't typically not my problem. Okay, now I have my head portion of the fish fastened, I think, where I want it. Now I'm going to do the tail. Now you can, if your tail does not fit well here, and it's just not laying in here like it's supposed to, you can shave down your artificial body. But depending on who made it and what they knew and how well they knew it, you may be taking away some important anatomy on your fish's mannequin only because to make it fit because you didn't get enough meat out. So it's real important to get all of the meat out, then see if it fits and if you have to take something down. As far as that fish pickle, we call it, we will put that fish in that pickle for probably maybe, fish like this, probably an hour, hour and a half.
And that fish pickle is on our blog on our MatuskaTaxidermy.com website.
Okay, now remember how I said I got my dorsal fin off when I was test fitting him? So now I do want to make sure that the dorsal fin is in the center of the fish. Now, if I had roughed this fish up, and you can do that, I don't really have a problem with that, but do make sure that you don't make it so rough that you can't slide the skin. Now, if you have a body that's too big for your skin, you're going to have a big gap in the back, and nobody's going to see that gap in the back. However, you might not be able to center your fins.
Michael Frost says, it's nice to see Tom at work. Looks good, Tom.
It's rare, getting less and less.
He says that you still have it.
Oh, I got it. Okay, now I want to check and see how everything lays here. One more thing, since I've got him here, I'd like to do. I have this loose skin from his throat latch up here, and I'm going to just take some these 1-inch brads, and I'm going to fasten that skin so it doesn't fall down on me. And I'm just going to countersink those 1-inch brads. Nobody's ever going to know they're there. Should they show when I'm doing finish work, a little bit of epoxy sculpt over there, over them will hide them.
Brian Schmidt would like to know if you put any clay in the head juncture or fin based.
I did a lot in the head to get a nice smooth transition. Now, sometimes I will get the fish ready to pose and I've got a void around the head. That's the first thing I'll check when I get him on his stand and tighten him down so I can work with him. And sometimes I will just have to lift up because of the way I skinned. I'm sure I have a hole up in here and I can put more clay up in there if I need it. Okay, I'm just going to lay him on a towel to keep him from getting away from me. I wouldn't do this on a crappie. I would keep it on a slick surface. Now, I'd take big needle like this, 10, 20-pound fire thread, and I would sew him up, lace him up the whole way. However, these bottom bodies are very nice and strong, and I can make a really nice seam much faster. And you don't see me staple many things around here, but I'm going to staple away. And then we're going to have you come look. Now, as long as the skin comes together, I'm just taking my fingers, squeezing that skin together, and stapling one staple across the seam. I'm just going to pull the pins out as I go. Now, if you want to see, I don't know, can you zoom in on that? Right from there to there, I stapled. That's going to be a really easy fix. It's not going to be hard to hide at all. And it's kind of cheating. Now, here's the drawback to this. Make sure everything is lined up before you start the stapling business, because remember, taxidermy, taxi is to arrange, dermy is the dermis, the skin. There is no arranging the skin once you fasten him with this. So make sure anal fins in the anal places, anus is where it goes. These pelvic fins are where they go. Make sure everything is where you want it, because a stapler takes away your taxi ability. Now I may get to an area here where the skin doesn't come together so well.
Mike would like to know, was there skinning and preparation video at the beginning? I missed the beginning.
That was the fastest skin job, and you should have not have missed it, because I skinned that fin. I had the fish. I started with a skinned fish.
And then Cindy would like to know, what size staples are you using?
These are, I think, 3/8. But they can be anything. They're not. The longer, the better to a point. Just so you don't come through the front of the fish. Now, it's very difficult to do this on a carved body because that foam is way too soft and it'll just bounce back. The stapler will not hold. And I'm going to go around my little rod here. And do keep checking to make sure everything's on center. I can feel I have a valley where my dorsal fin is supposed to lay, and it's lined up pretty nice. Not too many of you that are watching would have been around when Archie Phillips used to promote his Jiffy Quick fish bodies. And he had bass bodies. And if you went to a show, he would demonstrate how he can mount a fish like this in 6 minutes. And of course, nobody would believe him. And he would get somebody from the audience and he'd ask them to pull out their watch with a second hand, and he would proceed to show them how with a Jiffy Quick fish body he could mount a bass, which had been mounted incidentally probably 10 times that day, in 6 minutes. And he really could. I'm not in the 6-minute category, but okay, now I'm going to put him on a stand, but before I do, many of you, just like I started out, I would pose my fish, and all of a sudden the head is looking like a sheep head. It goes dunk, dunk, dunk. And what that's from is this head has a lot of weight. You have some kind of filler in there, you've got clay, things like that, and that head is going to want to drop down because of the weight. So once you get it on the stand, it's just going to start falling. In order to prevent that, I want to put a wire in there. And I've just got a couple sharpened wires here. And I'm going to put it in the drill. I could poke it in. If I had a button body or a carved body, I would just poke it in the soft foam. These are much harder. And I'm just going to stick this in the roof of his mouth. And I'm going to make sure the head is where I want it. Now, the only reason I went so far is because I had such a long wire. And that should hold my head from dropping down. Okay, now I'm going to stick him in his little stand. And I should have some tools here.
Jim Brown would like to know, do you ever use reproduction heads on walleye?
We don't very often. We have and do. That's a big, I don't want to say fad because it's good. It's a very good method of mounting fish, artificial heads and artificial fins. We always called them hybrid fish because they're getting towards the reproduction fish. There's more reproduction parts than the real fish. Typically we don't on our walleyes. We clean them up really, really nice. We rebuild the top of the head with epoxy like clay or fix-it sculpt or one of those type of materials. We skinned them out really, really good, so there's nothing that's gonna come back and get you. We have some pretty nice walleyes on the wall that have been there for many, many, many years without deteriorating. So no, we typically don't. Now, the nice method of a system like this of attaching your fish is if the customer wanted this fish angled down, you can easily pose him in the pose that the customer wanted. You can fight him up just for attitude while you're working with him, which is kind of nice. This fish will come off of this stand and go on driftwood or whatever it happens to be that the customer wants. Now, our method of posing the fish fins, we use a lot of these carding pieces. I think it's probably a needlepoint thing. Every time I cross stitch, I go to the store and get this. But it's nice. It's nice, flexible plastic material that we put on the back side of the fish. This side is perforated so air can get through and it can dry. We like it. And we keep all of these in a baggie, like a gallon bag, and it'll say 8 to 10 pound walleye. We might have one that says 4 to 5 pound walleye. We just keep them all in there, so when we take them off of a fish, we just pull them off like this, put them in the bag, and they're ready for the next person to use. So I probably won't get finished with this, so I'll go as far as I can for what we have time for. And you can cut these out to your liking. And I like to paper clip my fins heavy so they don't distort on me. Fins are strong. When they start drying, they can move. Make sure your fins and your whole fish are really nice and clean. It's going to give you you let them dry, there's going to be dirt and debris and borax residue and salt residue, and all of that stuff is going to detract from your finish. You start putting sealers over rough residue, and then pretty soon you're going to paint and you're going to wonder why your fish just doesn't look as smooth as he should. Now you can use hair clips. Some women use, or some guys use their wives' little squeezy clips. We get by with paper clips. If you buy paper clips, try to get the ones with the ribs on them. Works better. Now, I don't want that fin to go over that way, and I don't want it to go over this way. So I like to use these Euro pins, great big pins like these. Use them over and over, never throw them away. I slid it right alongside through a paper clip, and you can put 1 or 2 on there. They don't make holes big enough to fix. They're really a fine shafted pin.
Shane Halstead would like to know, what do you use for fin backing and fin repair?
Oh, that's a good, I tell you, I'm open to suggestions because I'm embarrassed to say we used to have the finest fin backing method of anybody. Jeff Compton came to our booth at the World Show one time, and he said, "These are the nicest fins I've ever seen." And I, yeah, they are nice. You know, we thought they were too. And that method was, we had a very thin product called Lexan, just like bulletproof windshields are Lexan, in a thin sheet form, and we put it on with contact cement on both the fin and the back of the Lexan. And once it hardened, we would trim them, and once we trimmed them, we would put a flexitive on, and they were a beautiful fin. And with EPA regulations and all that sort of thing, we lost our good contact cement. The Lexan people changed, and we don't have a very good method of doing fins anymore. And we're working on some epoxies. Some people are having really nice fins with epoxies. Artificial fins are real fun to use. So my answer is, I don't have a very good answer. Silk span, we've done a silk span for years. I never thought our silk span was as good as our Lexan.
Cindy would like to know, do you recommend a flexible fin or a stiffer fin?
Stiff and fine is great. Flexible's fine if it doesn't get wiggly. I've not come up with what I thought was the perfect preserved fin. I want flexible so people don't break them. We, as things change and all of a sudden you can't get different products, we've noticed that some of the adhesives that we used, the fin looks great, and after you take the carding off, put the flexitive on, it doesn't take long and they start changing on you, start getting a little wiggle or something. And we've sometimes even find ourselves recarding them after we've put the flexitive on. Now gravity affects everything in taxidermy, so I want to make sure that's why I put that rod in the head, and I want to make sure that this tail doesn't drop down in a funny attitude and angle overnight. So I'm going to take a couple of these heavy upholstery pins, and I'm going to stick them through my paper clips. Now, you also remember you have that clay that you put a little clay buffer here. Be careful with your finger. Don't dent it in with a finger, but smooth that out really nice and natural.
What's the usual dry time on a fish?
You're not going to be able to move him or adjust him probably by tomorrow. His fins will have started to dry up.
Jerry says, I have been using the Loctite in the caulk tube to fix the seam on the backs. Been using it with great results for about 3 years. Put it on, smooth it out with finger and water, and it accepts paint, of course, after they are dried.
The seam on the back? Yeah, there's a lot of good methods for doing seams. We do a lot of, at one point, I got a really deformed fin up here that looks funny. At one point, I thought I was really clever many, many years ago by putting auto body putty on the seam, and then I could file it down and rasp it down, and it gave me a beautiful seam that could be textured and painted and everything, only to find out a few years down the road, the auto body putty cracked. So I would get these fish back because I gave them a lifetime guarantee, and I would have to fix these cracks in the auto body putty. Then we went to some of the epoxies like Fix-It Sculpt and all of those, and some of those didn't do so well either. And we found that the one thing that would never crack or come apart was Magic Smooth. And so we did a lot of Magic Smooth just on the seam part. It's clear, it's kind of translucent. Do I have to quit pretty soon? I think you get the idea. I'll do one more fin here. And for your giveaway, have a nice giveaway today, I think.
Yeah, very nice one. We're giving away the fin carding system.
And that's everything you see that I'm using here on these fins. You can use it on birds. You can use it on, we have a carding system made of the same material for ears. It's very nice stuff, and you use it over and over and over and over. You get paper clips, you get pearl-headed pins, you get a roll of the solid, that's a nice one, a roll of the solid plastic, as well as sheets of the perforated plastic, and you can use it on anything. You can use that on ears, you can use it on fins, or you can use it on your birds. And that goes to the person from last week who liked and shared.
Yes, and the winner is Steven Stolley.
Steve, you're gonna like it. You start using this carding, and just, if you do fish, put it on a in a baggie when you're done with it, and save it for next time. If you want to do it on birds, cut the strips to your liking. Okay, now the things, I have my gills, I took a little bit too much out of there, so I'm going to take a pin and a needle nose, and I'm going to fasten my gill up so it doesn't drop down. I'm going to shape my cheeks just a little bit so they don't, so the symmetry is what I want. I will take a little of that carding material, and I'll cut a teardropped card for that gill cover, that bronchiolostical rays here. They're going to want to curl way up on you and shrink up. I want to hold them down there nice. But I think you can see that's going to be a pretty nice fish mounted on a fish-on-fish form, sculpted by Brett Wingfield and Tim Perkins. But that's how we do it.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks for joining us.
And don't forget to participate in our Mother's Day coloring contest. We have a post on our Facebook. There you can go download that coloring page, and it is for all ages. And the giveaway is a $209 value, so you won't want to miss out on that. And you have until this Sunday, the 8th, to get that done.
Who gives all this stuff away?
I guess we do.
$200.
All right, we will see you guys
Thanks, everybody.
next week.